Reforms in agriculture. Reforms have not been able to benefit agriculture, where the growth rate has been decelerating. Since 1991, public investment in agriculture sector, especially in infrastructure, which includes irrigation, power, roads, market linkage, and research and extension, which played a crucial role in the Green Revolution, has fallen. Further, the partial removal of fertilizer subsidies has led to increase in the cost of production, which has severely affected the small and marginal farmers. This sector has been experiencing a number of policy changes such as reduction in import duties on agriculture products, low minimum support price, and lifting of quantitative restrictions on the imports of agriculture products. These have adversely affected Indian farmers as they now have to face increased international competition. Moreover, because of export-oriented policy strategies in agriculture, there has been a shift from production for the domestic market towards production for the export market, focusing on cash crops in lieu of production of food grains. इसका lieu का मतलब क्या होता है? भूमि का lieu मतलब कि भूमि का, ठीक है. This puts pressure on the prices of food grains. Reforms in the industry. Industrial growth has also recorded has slowed down. This is because of decreasing demand of industrial products due to various reasons such as cheaper imports, inadequate investment in infrastructure, etc. In a globalized world, developing countries are compelled to open up their economies to greater flow of goods and capital from developed countries and rendering their industries vulnerable to imported goods. Cheaper imports have thus replaced the demand for domestic goods. Domestic manufacturers are facing competition from imports. The infrastructure facilities, including power supply, have remained inadequate due to lack of investment. Globalization is thus often seen as creating conditions for the free movement of goods and services from foreign countries that adversely affect the local industries and employment opportunities in developing countries. Moreover, a developing country like India still does not have the access to developed countries markets because of high non-tariff barriers. For example, although all quota restrictions on exports of textiles and clothing have been removed in India, USA has not removed their quota restrictions on import of textiles from India and China. Disinvestment. Every year, the government fixes a target for disinvestment of PSEs. For instance, in 1991-92, it was targeted to mobilize rupees 25,000 crore. Through disinvestment, the government was able to mobilize 3,040 crore more than the target. In 2017-18, the target was about 1 lakh crore and the achievement was about 1 lakh 57 crore. Criticize Criticize point out that the assets of PSC have been undervalued and sold the private sector. This means that there has been a substantial loss to the government and the outright sale of public assets. Moreover, the proceeds for disinvestment are used to offset the shortage of government revenues rather than using it for the development of PSCs and buildings social infrastructure in the country. Do you think selling a part of properties of government companies is the best way to improve their efficiency? Reforms in fiscal policies. Economic reforms have placed limits on the growth of public expenditure, especially in social sectors. The tax reductions in the reform period, aimed at yielding larger revenue and curb tax evasion, have not resulted in increase in tax revenue for the government. Also, the reform policies involving tariff reduction have curtailed कम किया गया कमी की गई the scope for raising revenue through the custom duties. In order to attract foreign investment, tax incentives are provided to foreign investors, which further reduced the scope for raising tax revenues. This has a negative impact on developmental and welfare expenditures. Conclusion क्या कह रहा है पूरे चैप्टर का? The process of globalization through liberalization and privatization policies has produced positive as well as negative results both for India and other countries. Some scholars argue that globalization should be seen as an opportunity in terms of greater access to global markets, high technology, and increased possibility of large industries of developing countries to become important players in the international arena. Sri tragedy. ये क्या है? Power sector reforms in many Indian states led to do away with the supply of electricity at subsidized rates and step rise in power tariffs. This has affected workers engaged in small industries. Power loom textile industry in Andhra Pradesh is an example since the wage of power loom workers are linked to the production of cloth. Power cut means cut in wages of weavers who were already suffering from hike in tariff. A few years ago, this led to a crisis in the livelihood of the weavers, and 50 power loom workers committed suicide in a small town called Chirisila in Andhra Pradesh. On the contrary, Contrary, the critics argue that globalization is a strategy of the developed countries to expand their markets in the other countries. According to them, it has compromised the welfare and identity of people belonging to poor countries. It has further been pointed out that market-driven globalization has widened the economic disparities among nations and people. Viewed from the Indian context, some studies have stated that the crisis that erupted in the early 1990s was basically an outcome of the deep-rooted inequalities in Indian society and the economic reform policies initiated as a response to the crisis by the government, with externally advised policy package further aggravated the inequalities. Further, it has increased the income and quality of consumption of only high-income groups, and the growth has been concentrated only in some select areas in the service sector, such as telecommunication, information technology, finance, entertainment, travel and hospitality services, real estate, and trade, rather than vital sectors such as agriculture and industry, which provide livelihoods to millions of people in the country. एक बार देख लें तरीका. The economy was facing problems of declining foreign exchange, growing imports without matching, rise in exports, and high inflation. India changed its economic policies in 1991 due to a financial crisis, pressure from international organizations like the World Bank and IMF. 1991 में क्या हो रहा था? हाई इन्फ्लेशन हो गया था और फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस आ रहा था. हमारे ऊपर प्रेशर था इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस का, जो कौन सी थी? वर्ल्ड बैंक और IMF. ठीक है. इन द डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी मेजर रिफॉर्म्स वेयर अंडरटेकन इन द इंडस्ट्रियल एंड फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर्स. जो रिफॉर्म करे थे इंडस्ट्रियल फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर्स में, मेजर एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर रिफॉर्म इंक्लूडेड फॉरेन एक्सचेंज डीरेगुलेशंस एंड इम्पोर्ट लिबरलाइजेशन. पहले हमारी इकोनॉमी कैसी थी? क्लोज्ड इकोनॉमी थी, यानी कि जो भी हम भारत में कमा रहे हैं वो भारत में खर्च कर रहे हैं और भारत में ही बचा रहे हैं, भारत के लोग खा रहे हैं, भारत के लोग बना रहे हैं. ठीक है. इसके बाद 1991 के बाद क्या कर दिया गया? इकोनॉमी को ओपन कर दिया गया और क्लोज भी रखा किसी किसी सेक्टर में, जैसे डिफेंस के सेक्टर में अभी भी क्लोज इकोनॉमी काम कर रही है. तो फिर ये कैसी बन गई? मिक्स बन गई. मिक्स इकोनॉमी क्या होती है? मिक्स इकोनॉमी वो होती है जो किसी सेक्टर में क्लोज है, कहीं कहीं पे पूरी तरीके से ओपन नहीं है, और कहीं कहीं पे पूरी तरीके से ओपन है. जैसे डिफेंस सेक्टर में ये क्लोजली वर्क करती है, और ओपन कहाँ पे है? बाकी मार्केट में ये ओपन है. ठीक है. With a view to improving the performance of the public sector, there was a consensus on reducing its role and opening it with up to the private sector. This was done through disinvestment and liberalization measures. Globalization is the outcome of the policies of liberalization and privatization. It means an integration of the economy of the country with the world economy. Outsourcing is emerging as a emerging मतलब उभरना has a major activity in industrial and service sectors. The objective of the WTO is to establish a rule-based trade regime to ensure optimum utilization of world resources. During the reforms, growth of agriculture and industry has gone down, but the service sector has registered growth. Reforms have not benefited the agriculture sector. There has also been a decline in public investment in the sector. Industrial sector growth has slowed down due to availability of cheaper imports एंड लोअर इन्वेस्टमेंट। ठीक है, और इसी के साथ ये चैप्टर भी हो जाता है समाप्त। अब मिलेंगे अगले चैप्टर में।